Hello everyone, welcome to the very first of what I hope will be many malware deep dives for this channel. This channel hasn't been very active, but I do hope to be bringing it back in the next year. Today we'll be taking a look at a piece of malware so dangerous that it grounded airplanes, shut down an entire state's train service, brought email service to a halt, and even kicked patients out of hospital. But more on all that later. So I'm sure you're all very excited to hear about this worm that's so dangerous. Well, today's malware deep dive centers on the Sasser worm. Sasser is what's called a networm or network worm, which differs from the more traditional email worm, and that it requires very little, if any, user interaction to be infected. This differs from an email worm, which is usually delivered, as the name suggests, via email and an attachment that a user would have to download and run to be infected. Sasser exploited a vulnerability in a Windows component called LSASS, or the Local Security Authority Subsystem Service. LSASS is the system that Windows uses to keep track of owners of processes and who has permissions on the computer. We'll see the effects of this later on in the live demonstration when the worm uses this process to spread and ultimately crashes it. The worm's author had actually reverse engineered a patch from Microsoft, which was released earlier in 2004 and fixed the issue. However, the problem with this was not everyone had automatic updates on in the year 2004. In 2004, we were still at the tail end of the dial-up era, and home broadband connections were not nearly as fast as they are today. Another issue was that companies were hesitant to deploy brand new updates, and still are, to the masses, not knowing if they might have any side effects. Microsoft releases monthly patch updates, and sometimes from working in IT, these have unexpected effects, so IT professionals are a little bit skeptical sometimes. So what exactly did Sasser do in the wild? Was it as damaging as I hyped it up to be in the intro? Well, actually yes, and even a little bit worse. First off, in the UK, the BBC reported that the country's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency had been hit by the worm, affecting their head office as well as 19 of their regional offices. Search and rescue efforts weren't actually affected, but internal communications were. In Taiwan, the National Post Office said around 1,600 of its machines had been taken offline, forcing over 400 of its branches to resort to pen and paper and causing a lot of delays. In Hong Kong, the government remained relatively tight-lipped, but did say that government departments and hospitals were hit by the worm and some services were disrupted. Australia saw two major impacts from the worm. First, in New South Wales, Railcorp, which is now a part of New South Wales Trainlink, was crippled to the extent that the state's trains were halted due to the virus wreaking havoc in their radio systems, the ones that they use to talk to the drivers and the people working the lines and signals. The other instance in Australia was that Westpac Bank was also affected massively and had to revert to pen and paper for transaction records due to its systems being swamped by the worm. This affected customers for a little while as the bank had to catch up after the worm had been removed from their system. In Finland, an insurer called Sampo Group ended up closing all of its 130 branches as a precaution after seeing the initial signs of infections of Sasser within its internal networks. In the US, Delta Airlines was forced to cancel several transatlantic flights due to its systems being overrun by the worm. Delta wasn't especially forthcoming about the impact that the worm had, but the fact that it had to ground flights means it must have been fairly significant. Finally, in Sweden, the Lund University Hospital had its X-ray machines all taken down by the worm, with patients having to be transported to other nearby hospitals for emergency treatment. But that's enough of the background. Let's get into a live demonstration of the worm on a closed network of real physical computers. We could do this with virtual machines, but I thought the physical computer approach would be far more interesting. It's always better to see what these worms will do in the wild when confronted with real network conditions and real computer hardware. Okay, so to quickly take you around the three computers we have here, we've got a compact Presario V6000, a HP EliteBook 83 or 8530p, and a Toshiba Satellite M50. Now these are all running Windows XP. They're actually running XP RTM, which is the release to manufacturing version of Windows XP. And I chose this because it is literally XP with no updates, so nothing's been patched, and this worm has the best possible chance to work its magic. So I apologize for the sort of janky filming, but I don't do these kinds of live demonstrations very often, but we will go ahead and run the worm on our computer 1 source of infection here, the Presario, and it doesn't seem to do anything when you first run it, but you can see the CPU spikes to 100% briefly, and if we leave this long enough, we should see the CPU on this machine be pegged at 100% as it continues to seek out and look for computers to infect. So we can see the process here. I've left it named as Networm Sasser just so it's easier for us to spot in the processes list, but also taking a note of the time, it's 11:21 and we are running this machine. So let's see how long it takes for another one to get hit. Okay, so it just took about 4 minutes and we see the symptom of the worm on the first machine, which is that LSA shell export version has crashed, which is lsass.exe, which I spoke about earlier in the background of the video rather, and it uses this process to spread, and in the process it crashes this, so we're just going to say don't send, and the machine still works for now. If we go back to the processes here, oh, and Task Manager, Task Manager doesn't seem to like that, which is never a good sign. If Task Manager is not responding, then we're really in trouble. We'll try and close Task Manager. Oh, and there we go. So that is the final symptom of the worm. It is this error message here which says this system is shutting down. Please save any work in progress or all work in progress, and any unsaved changes will be lost. Now this is because Windows doesn't like it when LSA shell is not working. If we go into the processes list here, we look okay for now, but any new processes that decide that they want to open are not going to be attributed to a user, which is very bad, basically. Now, an interesting side effect of this worm is I wanted to restart this machine because I just had to reconfigure the network really quick, and we actually don't have permission to do so because LSASS determines who has permissions to do what on the machine. So to turn a computer off, we have to just hold the power button and it will do it. Now after about another 10 minutes it looks like it has launched on this machine. We can see the avserv2.exe process is running. This machine has not crashed with the LSA shell export version error yet, but we will hopefully see that soon, and it means that this one, which is just sitting idly, hopefully will be infected at some point soon as well. Alright, so for the thrilling conclusion of this portion of the video, this machine has actually just died, and it's got no lights on despite it being plugged in. Yeah, that's lovely. We can see that computer 1 has done the LSA shell thing again, Task Manager's frozen, and right on cue it wants to shut down. This LSA shell message has been there for about 5 minutes. Now if we just wake this one up, we can see it still has avserv2 running, ftp.exe was running and closing itself. So yeah, we are seeing the worm is spreading, but not to this machine. Rip in pepperonis. So now we know the background, we've seen it in action, but we're still left asking what happened next. Who wrote this worm and released it on the world? Well, as one can imagine, following the crippling impact this worm had in certain IT instances, the investigation was massive, as was a bounty set by Microsoft. The tech giant at the time offered a $250,000 bounty for information leading to the arrest of the worm's author, a sum which was equivalent to just over $400,000 in today's money. This offer proved far too tempting for one of the author's friends, who spilled the beans to Microsoft in early May 2004. Following this tip-off, the author, German university student Sven Yashan, was arrested and charged with data manipulation and disruption of public systems. Luckily for Yashan, he was charged as a minor, as he wrote the worm before his 18th birthday. Yashan was sentenced to 21 months in prison, but this was suspended and converted to a sentence of 30 hours community service due to his status as a minor at the time. Also included in Yashan's charges were writing and releasing the Netski or Netsky worm, which itself was fairly damaging, but I'll leave that for another video. There's very little information online about Yashan's life in the years following the incident. However, reports circulating from around 2005 suggest he was hired by a security company pretty quickly after his arrest, and it would be easy to imagine he still works in that field. Well, thank you very much for watching the first of hopefully many videos on this channel around malware and doing deep dives, and I do hope to see you all next time. If you have any suggestions on what you'd like me to cover next, please do let me know down in the comments. I'm thinking something like WannaCry/WannaCrypt, or maybe NavaShield. I really like NavaShield. But please do let me know down in the comments, and hopefully I will see you all in the next video.